The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ.
All right, everybody, welcome. It's Wednesday, January 27th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator. So glad to have you here for 60 minutes of news, interviews, talk, chat, and more from the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. We got a full show for you today, and joining me from 90 miles away in Astoria, Oregon, my half-sister, our newsreader, Cannabis Carrie.
Hello, Radical Russ. How are you doing today?
Oh, having a good day. Hey, did you see that big, bright, glowing, yellow, hot disc in the sky today?
I don't think it's as bright and glowing here on the coast as it is there in sunny Portland, but it is gorgeous, and I'm going to try to schedule some beach time after the show.
All right, folks, if you're new to the show, Carrie brings us the news right after our first break. Tell us what's coming up on our headlines today.
Today we're going to look at the White House. They have a new nomination that we're going to talk about. The Baltimore Sun is looking at Maryland. Legislators have added some legislation there we're going to talk about. And we're going to go over some marijuana contests in the nation in some of the medical marijuana states. All
right. All that's coming up in just a couple of minutes here on the NORML headlines. Stick around, Carrie. We'll have you back on in just a moment. Also, want to let folks know that we are blogging out at stash.norml.org. All the stories that we're covering today and more, plus the music, you'll be able to download that from our blog at stash.norml.org. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Radical Russ on the old Twitter account. And also, coming up after the news, we've got your daily toker tune. Johnny Reeferseed from Iowa is bringing us some music for Irie Wednesday, our salute to reggae, calypso, Latin type music. So stick around for that. This is kind of an interesting one today. We've got music from Australia. Interesting enough. So we'll have that coming to you from down under. Then at the bottom of the hour today, Wednesday, we always have our dose of cannabis science. Dr. Mitch Earlywine from the State University of New York at Albany. He will be joining us. He's a leading researcher on marijuana with culture, history, science, and medicine. And you can ask all your questions through the live chat. Just click on to our live.norml.org chat. Carrie will pick up the questions and relay them to me, and we'll make sure that Dr. Mitch can answer those questions. Also, if you want to email Dr. Mitch, you can. His email address is 420research@gmail.com. So all of that and more is coming up on your NORML Show Live today. Stick around. We've also got a special announcement about the upcoming Cannapalooza in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Mandalay Bay this March 19th through the 21st. We're also going to give you our cannabis community calendar, tell you what's going on with NORML chapters all around the country, and plenty more coming up here on NORML Show Live. We are the voice of the marijuana nation. Please, if you'd like to get in touch with the show, just send me an email. It's stash@norml.org. We'll be glad to help you with getting a NORML chapter started or learning more about ending adult marijuana prohibition in your area. Stick around. We're right back after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford, from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
I think you'd probably be a lot cooler if you had, Mr. President.
I said, hey, do you have a joint, kid? Sure would be a lot cooler if you did. Light it, don't hide it. Light it, don't hide it. Oh, light it, don't hide it. Light it, don't hide it. Just light it, don't hide it. Fire it up.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Normal News with Cannabis Carrie.
Yesterday, the White House issued a press release that President Barack Obama would nominate Michelle Leonhart to head the Drug Enforcement Administration. Leonhart is a career law enforcement officer and was appointed by George W. Bush in 2003 as the deputy administrator in the DEA. Karen Tandy, another Bush-appointed official, had resigned as the head of the DEA in 2007, and Leonhart has been serving as the acting administrator of the DEA ever since. She began working for the agency in the 1980s when she was hired as a special agent. The president listed her qualifications in the release as having 30 years with the DEA, her management roles in field division, and various awards she has earned in her career. Now, John Pistol, Deputy Director for the FBI, New York U.S. Attorney Brad Johnson III, and California U.S. Attorney Greg Vega were all interviewed for the post, and until yesterday, Pistol was considered a frontrunner. Some critics of the Leonhart nomination say that reaffirming Bush policies by retaining his worst appointees is at the very least disappointing.
Disappointing to say the least. I've been reporting on Michelle Leonhart for quite some time here at our blog at stash.normal.org. Now, I remember when Barack Obama was running for president, and he said, quote, "My administration will value science. We will make decisions based on facts," end quote. Well, with the appointment of Michelle Leonhart from the Bush administration to now head up the DEA, you can forget about facts and science having any bearing on what the DEA is going to be doing. For example, let's take a look at the Mexican drug war. In the Mexican drug war, in the past 2 years, more people have died, more innocent Mexicans and police and federal officials have been murdered than people who died in 9/11, the Iraq War, and Afghanistan, at least from the American side. Right? Over 12,000, I think it's up to 14,000 now, people have died in Mexico because of this drug war. And when there was a story on that, they asked Michelle Leonhart what she thought about the increase in violence. And her quote was, "Our view is that the violence we have been seeing is a signpost of the success of our very courageous Mexican counterparts. The cartels are acting out like caged animals because they are caged animals." So she sees 12,000 dead Mexicans' bodies piled up in the streets of Tijuana and Juarez and other places as success. We're turning a corner in the war on drugs, I believe. I also reported a story on Michelle Leonhart when she flew to Colombia, Bogota, Colombia, for a meeting. But rather than taking one of the DEA's 106 taxpayer-funded planes, she instead spent $123,000 to charter a private jet to fly to Bogota, Colombia. And let's not forget the case of science here. You want to talk about science. For so long, our opponents have been saying about medical marijuana, well, there's no science to back it up. There's no studies that prove all these wonderful things you're saying. Well, the problem is because you won't let us do the studies. We've been trying to get marijuana through the FDA processes, but the National Institutes of Drug Abuse won't release any marijuana to reputable scientists to be able to study. One such scientist is Professor Lyle Craker from UMass Amherst, and he petitioned the DEA for medical-grade cannabis that he would have permission to grow in order to do legitimate studies. The DEA's own administrative law judge, Judge Bittner, recommended to the administrator of the DEA that, yes, he's a reputable scientist, he should be allowed to grow marijuana, he should be allowed to study it. Deputy DEA Administrator Michelle Leonhardt, on February 12, 2007, acting as the administrator, rejected that non-binding 88-page recommendation following 9 days of hearings and evidence presented by the ACLU and others on both sides of the issue. This is the person Barack Obama wants to put in charge, or is putting in charge, or is suggested should be in charge, she still has to be confirmed, to be the new head of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Change we can believe in? I'm thinking, same as it ever was, same as it ever was.
This piece from the Baltimore Sun this morning, Maryland has 2 medical marijuana bills that were introduced by legislators on Tuesday in the General Assembly. The bills were announced at a press conference yesterday. The legislation would allow the use of marijuana by patients with debilitating medical conditions such as seizures, severe chronic pain, or nausea and cancer. The bill would allow doctors to approve cannabis use as a treatment after other treatments have failed. And it also sanctions dispensaries and even pharmacies to distribute the marijuana. Patients would have to register with the state and then get cannabis from either a state-licensed dispensary or pharmacies that would supply it. The bill is sponsored in the House of Delegates by Delegate Dan Morhaim, a Baltimore County Democrat and emergency medical physician. Senator David Brinkley, a Republican, is the bill's sponsor in the Senate. The bill is restrictive in that patients would not be permitted to grow their own cannabis. Now, since 2003, Maryland has a law that allows defendants charged with marijuana possession leniency if they can prove medical necessity. The 2000 law was criticized for implying that sick people must find illegal drug dealers to produce what is medicine for them. The bill has a great deal of support and not much opposition yet. Advocates in the state are feeling hopeful that this will pass to make Maryland the nation's 15th state to legalize cannabis for medical use.
The Maryland case is kind of interesting. Maryland does have what's called an affirmative defense to medical marijuana. And what that means is if you are a patient, you're sick, you're dying, you're going blind, whatever it might be, and you're using medical marijuana, you're using marijuana, cannabis for medicinal purposes, and you go out in the black market, you go out to the park, you meet the black market marijuana dealer, and you get your marijuana, and the cops bust you. Then after the cops bust you, and they put you in handcuffs, and they take you down to the station, and they fingerprint you, and they take your mug shot, and they book you, and they put you in a holding cell, and you pay for bail, and get out awaiting charges, and hire yourself a defense attorney, then when you get to court, you can tell the judge it was medical, and they may dismiss the charges and leave you with a $100 fine. Now, of course, that's after paying for your bail, that's after paying for your attorney, that's after possibly losing time at work, on your paycheck, maybe even losing your job. So affirmative defense will affirmatively leave you broke, is what it will leave you. So to improve that law is a good thing. Let's not go too far. Maryland, if you're going to improve that law and give patients a little bit better protections, that's wonderful. However, got some problems with some of the points of the law here. First of all, this idea that people should only be able to get medical marijuana if other treatments have failed. This is what I always call the medicine of last resort plank in medical marijuana laws. All right, if you take a whole bunch of addictive, liver-damaging, side-effect-laden pharmaceuticals, and they don't work for you, and, they're really expensive, but if they don't work for you, then you can have the safe, non-toxic herbal remedy. Marijuana should be the medicine of first resort. It doesn't have the harmful side effects, the constipation, sexual dysfunction, pain, nausea that some of these other drugs give people. I know my father, he's got 4 prescriptions he's got to take, and then he's got to take 9 other prescriptions to deal with the side effects from the 4 prescriptions, right? Medical marijuana should be the medicine of first resort. I do not like this where they say you have to try everything else first. Number 2, that they're going to get medicine from dispensaries and pharmacies. Well, once you start throwing pharmacy in there, you're dealing with pharmacists who have federal licenses. And the federal government does not believe there is such a thing as medical marijuana. And so once you start trying to get pharmacists to dispense it, they are risking their federal license to dispense other controlled medications. So I don't know if the pharmacy thing is going to work out so well. And finally, this point about no home growing. This is a point that has happened in a lot of these East Coast medical marijuana proposals, to not allow people to grow their medicine at home. And speaking for NORML, I've got to tell you, we strongly believe in the right to unmolested home grow from government interference. We believe that by allowing people to grow at home, that is the only way they can protect their interests from either corporations or governments that will try to control and limit the supply of marijuana to the people. If they try to tax it too high, if they're not giving us quality enough marijuana, only the right to home grow protects us from all of these possibilities. We've got numbers, they've got money and power. So we always stand for the right to home grow. We wouldn't vote against a medical marijuana law if it didn't have home grow, but we strongly encourage the people fighting for these laws to include home growing. Why would you want to force marijuana to be more like a pharmaceutical, where you have to pick it up from a pharmacy, where it has to be prepackaged, where there has to be a whole bunch of middlemen and jacking up of the prices in between the consumer and the medicine? The beautiful thing about medical marijuana is that it's a house plant. It's like aloe vera. It's a house plant you can grow for relatively low cost and very little potential harm that can take care of so much for you. Come on, Maryland, you can do better than that. Give us a law that allows home grow and medical marijuana as the medicine of first resort.
And marijuana contests are in the news this week. One is canceled and others are flourishing. Tickets are nearly sold out for Aspen, Colorado's upcoming first annual Western Slope Cannabis Crown, a 2-day festival that will be held April 17th. About 50 dispensaries would contribute marijuana samples for testing. There will be a People's Choice Award, but the ultimate winner will be based on a diagnostic testing for THC levels. The conference is open to the public and will include speakers, live music, information booths, and a competition among providers to showcase their best strains. Growers and providers will vie for the Cannabis Crown. Organizer Bobby Skurlock was quoted saying, "We want to get the best of the best in there. This is not about potheads running around the streets. This conference is to enlighten people and talk about benefits and its economic impact." Now, it's a different story in Detroit, Michigan, where organizers have pulled the plug on a medical marijuana contest after a local prosecutor called it illegal. In the planned contest, certified caregivers' marijuana samples would have been adjudged by card-carrying medical marijuana patients. Although the contest has been scrubbed to avoid controversy, the Michigan Caregivers Cup is still on for January 30th and 31st. It will just focus on classes and exhibits on how to legally grow, dispense, and use medical marijuana. Now, Oregon State NORML has hosted the Oregon Medical Marijuana Awards for 7 years now, and in their state, the contest, the patient judges receive samples beforehand and do the judging at home. Awards are handed out at ceremonies that are held each December in Portland, Oregon.
Wow, there's so many contests going on, and one thing a lot of these folks need to learn is that you cannot call your contest a cannabis cup. Okay, that's trademark from High Times Magazine, and they employ a lot of lawyers who actually have to contact people year after year who want to call their contest a cannabis cup. Don't do it. Call it the Cannabis Crown. I think that's great. From Aspen up there, Oregon has the Oregon Medical Cannabis Awards. Sad to hear about Michigan and theirs being canceled. Of course, we always like to see more events for the community, as many as we can. We got to take a break. It's 20 after the hour, especially for those of you on the East Coast. We know what you're doing. Stick around. We'll be right back. More NORML Show Live coming up.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Law420.com. Hello, I'm Russ Belville, Outreach Coordinator for NORML. In my job, I read literally hundreds of headlines each month involving nonviolent, productive citizens whose lives are ripped apart by a marijuana or drug arrest. Many citizens could avoid arrest by refusing police searches and remaining silent, but police are well trained to confuse and intimidate. That's why you have a right to speak to an attorney before answering any police questions. I hope you never need to exercise that right, but if you do, make your first call to the law offices of John C. Lucy IV. John Lucy is an accomplished criminal defense attorney with expertise in Oregon's medical marijuana law. John Lucy understands and respects cannabis and drug consumers of all backgrounds. Call John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit in downtown Portland. Address available at law420.com. That's John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit law420.com today.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Our marijuana laws are terribly unfair, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges, and we are unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They are average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. And it's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Welcome back, everyone. 22 after the hour. Time for your Daily Toker Tunes. Little Irie Wednesday. It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our pod-safe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, and Latin music. Brought to you by Johnny Reeferseed and the High Rollers, America's favorite red-eyed soul rock and roll band, available now on iTunes and CD Baby. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tune. We go all the way to the great Midwest of the United States to visit with our good friend Johnny Reeferseed from Johnny Reeferseed and the High Rollers. Johnny, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Russ, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing good. We're actually seeing the sun a little bit up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's frightening all of the Northwesterners.
Same here. We haven't. We might have had a little bit of sun yesterday, and that's about it all week.
All right. Tell folks about Johnny Reeferseed and the High Rollers, how they can hear you guys' music.
They can hear us on myspace.com/Gareth High Rollers. We've got more songs up there. And we've got 2 songs, one of them featuring Afro Man, for sale on iTunes.
myspace.com. myspace.com/JRS High Rollers. All right. Yep. All right. We'll get that up on the chat window for everyone. Tell us about the tune we're going to hear now.
All right. Well, this is one I might be pushing the genre envelope a little bit.
That's
but,
what we do.
It's kind of like half reggae and half country.
Okay.
But it's a band I discovered called the Bushwhackers from Australia. And anyways, when a group of Melbourne University students gathered to share their love of traditional music in 1971, little did they realize that they were establishing a musical institution. There have been bush bands before, but none that captured the public's imagination to such an extent that they were able to turn professional. Having established residencies in Melbourne pubs, the band's attention quickly turned to Europe, where 2 of their great influences, Fairport Convention and Planksty, were leading a folk revival. They wanted to be part of the action, and in 1974 took off to try their luck. After decades of relentless touring, in 1995 the band decided to take a break from touring, and they had a last show called The Last Dance, and it was broadcast on Australian Broadcasting Corporation. They continue to record and perform at major festivals and events, and you can buy their records off iTunes also, and you can check out their whole bio. It's long. I mean, they've got a long history. You can check it out at www.thebushwhackers.com.au. So let's have a talk for our brothers and sisters in Marijuana Australiana.
All right, this is the Bushwhackers with Marijuana Australiana. Thanks a lot, Johnny, for bringing us this tune.
Have you heard the word about the herb superb? You can take it from an ogre like me. Just take a toke for a bit of a joke and you're out of your coolabah tree. And the bloke next door, he wants to call the cops because you're smiling and looking happy. He should plant a few seeds, grow a few weeds, and the world don't look so crappy. Talk about marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than booze, safer than pills, make you sing like Frank Sinatra. Marijuana, definitely top banana. It's the greatest craze since Tivoli days. You can buy from the nearest farmer. I was laying a rave in this cocky about changing some of our laws. I said, you know, they arrest us folks as grass and they lock us up indoors. He said, sir, it's you right, because smoking them drugs, they lead you to the hardest stuff. But then I found he was growing a whole plantation, because life on the land's a bit tough. Growing that marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than booze, safer than pills, make it sing like Norman Gunston. Marijuana, definitely top banana. It's the greatest craze since the Tivoli days. You can buy it from the nearest farmer. Well, I suppose some of you want to know where you'll know where you get a deal on good leads to tell you that there's one in every town. There's one in every town. And the policeman's boot to get sticky heads full of hash oil. Yes, folks, is from to go to Darwin, to the local library, yes, from Hobart to Darwin, Hawbury to Wodonga, Griffith to Lebanese House, wherever the police hands your backyard, into your backyard, even the dogs in the street, no, the drug squad, they have the beds, they pinch from the people they bust, and they'll sell you some for a bloody great profit, but you can't find one you can trust. And apart from that, all the doctors, they got to keep up the country's tax. So when the pills and the grog start to rot your old body, got a much better way to relax. Smoking that marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than booze, safer than pills, make it sing like Joan Sutherland. Marijuana, definitely top banana. It's the greatest craze since the Tivoli days. You can buy it from the nearest farmer. Smoke a reefer, smoke a reefer, smoke a reefer, smoke a reefer. Now, I'm not saying you should smoke the old grass. It'll stuff up your lungs. And smoking, it makes you old and sick instead of healthy and young. Let's plant a few seeds, grow a few weeds, rip off a head or two, and boil up the billy. For a cup of herbal tea, you'll get the right point of view. Smoking that marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than booze, safer than pills, make it sing like, come on.
I'm so pleased you love me.
Marijuana, definitely top banana. It's the greatest craze since the Tivoli days. You can buy it from your nearest farmer. Talk about marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than booze, safer than pills, make it sing like the birds in spring. Marijuana, definitely top banana. It's the greatest craze since the Tivoli days. You can buy it from your nearest farmer. It's the greatest craze since the Tivoli days. You can buy it from your nearest farmer.
Marijuana Australiana from the Bushwhackers Band. You can download that at our blog, stash.normal.org. Look in the main menu for media and then for tunes, and you'll find the catalog of all the Daily Toker tunes we play here on Normal Show Live.
It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere.
Time to check our Normal Cannabis Community Calendar, which you can find at normal.org/calendar. On Thursday, January 28th, the University of New Hampshire NORML is having their meeting, and the California State University Fresno NORML is having their meeting. Check our calendar for more details. On Friday, January 29th, Philly NORML is having a 2010 kickoff fundraiser featuring Keith Stropp, the founder of NORML, and plenty of great bands. We'll be having a couple members from Philly NORML on the show tomorrow to tell you more about it. And on Monday, February 1st, the Southfield Compassion Club in Southfield, Michigan will be meeting. Email southfieldcompassion@gmail.com for more details.
Have you considered medical marijuana? Double-blind, peer-reviewed studies have found cannabinoid therapies to be successful in treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, brain cancers, chronic pain, diabetes mellitus, dystonia, fibromyalgia, GI disorders, hepatitis C, HIV/AIDS, hypertension, incontinence, MRSA, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome, as well as anecdotal evidence suggesting relief from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, plus reduction in the need for narcotic painkillers. Side effects of medical marijuana can include euphoria, relaxation, anxiety, panic reactions, paranoia, tachycardia, dry eyes, dry mouth, concentration and reaction time impairment, appetite increase, and in 37 states, arrest and incarceration. But medical marijuana is non-toxic and cannot cause overdose. Medical marijuana. It's not for everyone, but ask your doctor if medical marijuana may be right for you.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany. Now, open wide and say, ah. Here's your dose of cannabis science.
We're visiting with Professor Mitch Earlywine from the State University of New York at Albany. Professor, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back.
I like saying professor.
Oh, I like hearing it.
Yeah, Dr. Earlywine just got promoted up from associate professor, was it?
Exactly.
All right, to full professor, and we're so happy about that because it just shows that you can be, upfront about, your feelings about this stupid war on marijuana and still make it somewhere in this world, as if Michael Phelps, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton hadn't already proved that. To start off our show today, Dr. Earlywine, I was just wondering if you had any specific studies you wanted to cover before we jumped right into people's questions.
Well, we had a nice email from a listener that asked about the vaporizer and certain aspects of aluminum that might get into the vapor. And I've discovered a study showing that is not a concern. Another query has to do with ammonia coming out of the vaporizer in street cannabis, and I'm looking into that. It looks like that may be more an issue with knowing your grower than anything else. So street cannabis, but not the NIDA cannabis, is producing some ammonia in the vaporizer, and I'm apprehensive about where these folks got their street cannabis, and maybe they came across somebody who was a little heavy on the fertilizer, and that may have been the problem.
Okay. And this concern with vaporizers and aluminum, with this was just the idea that it might get so hot the aluminum would release some sort of toxic chemicals or something?
I can understand that concern, and that's, I think, why the study was done in the first place. But aluminum's pretty resilient as far as that kind of thing is concerned, and it's not showing up in any measurable level in the vapors. Again, as long as folks aren't cranking the heat up too bad. This was done with Volcano, but I think other vaporizers either don't have aluminum or also wouldn't create any, as long as you're making sure you're not actually seeing smoke come out of the tube.
I see. All right. And some people out there who are watching us for the first time might be a little new to the idea. Can you just briefly explain vaporization and why it's more efficient than smoking or better for us than smoking?
I'd be delighted. The vaporizer is a gizmo that essentially runs hot air past your cannabis so that it releases cannabinoids in a fine mist but doesn't actually ignite the plant, and that way none of the nasty respiratory irritants end up in this vapor. And in fact, my student Nicholas Van Dam just emailed me the data, the clinical trial we've done. We've had 22 people go through, and a month later, after switching to the vaporizer, anybody who had some respiratory symptoms showed some pretty dramatic improvement on things like coughing and wheezing. And they also improved the amount of air they can hold in their lungs and how fast they can blow it out. So I'm really excited about the vaporizer, and I hope folks will consider turning to it.
Well, a couple of questions are coming in now with regard to vaporizers. Apparently some folks know quite a bit about them, and there's a lot of discussion here as to what is the best temperature, Fahrenheit or Celsius, I guess, here, that one should vaporize their herb.
It's hard to know across different settings, but generally in that 120 to 170 degree range is going to be fine. It's sometimes better to just monitor what does it look like in the bag or in your tube. And if you can actually see smoke, that's clearly too hot. If you can't see anything at all, that doesn't mean it's too cool. Go ahead and inhale from it and see if you see sort of a light blue mist coming out in your exhalation. If that's what you've got, then that's going to work just fine. And believe me, cranking it up higher is no guarantee that it's actually better.
All right. A lot of stuff coming in here about the vaporization. A Corink is asking, or A Corink, I guess, is asking, why is the effect different from using a vaporizer than from smoking? Is the high any different?
I've had at least 4 people tell me that the high seems different to them, and that often it takes longer to have its impact than it does when they're smoking. I don't have a great pharmacological explanation for that, and I'm looking into it. It seems that perhaps ignited cannabis is something that folks tend to force down their lungs more rapidly, and we're accustomed to holding it down long. That may have something to do with it, but unfortunately we don't have definitive evidence just yet. Again, I just recommend if you can be just a little more patient, most folks are quite impressed with it.
Okay. Let me go back to the top of the list of questions here. We'll come back to some of the vaporization questions in a moment. We're speaking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, who's a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and the author of Pot and Parenting, among other great books on marijuana science. There's a question here from AR who wanted to ask you about the 2003 U.S. patent number 663507. This is the patent for the medical use of cannabinoids, I believe. Is that the kind of ammunition we should use in our anti-prohibition agenda, and does it further support us removing cannabis from Schedule 1?
I think so. Here we actually have documented evidence that the government has approved the idea that a cannabinoid has medical utility. If you get through the details on that patent law and the patent application, it doesn't say that there's a specific mode of administration that is approved and others that are explicitly not approved. So here's a wonderful document for, again, supporting the argument that medical cannabis is for real. I would add, too, that some other work that's been coming out lately showing that THC by itself without cannabidiol is particularly troublesome for some folks and seems to create some of the magical ideation and disorientation that is so problematic when we see folks use Marinol. And here's yet another argument that whole plant is clearly better than any of the synthesized things we've made so far. What a stunner. Mother Nature made a better thing than we did.
Yeah, certainly. Let's go to another question here from Dustin. Dustin is asking, does THC actually kill cancer cells or just repair damaged cells?
It turns out at least one study suggests both THC and a number of endogenous cannabinoids, things that are in your body already that work in the cannabinoid system, do shrink tumor cells, at least in animals and petri dish type studies. We haven't seen it used in humans yet, but you can imagine why.
Yeah. Yeah, tough to get those studies approved whenever you're trying to find some medical or good utility from marijuana, but plenty of money if you want to find something bad. Is that what you found?
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. All right. We're taking your questions here in our chat room at live.normal.org for Dr. Mitch Earlywine, a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany. And let's go to this next question here from Paparatus Beats. Okay. Got the long names here in the chat room. Does vaporization, make the tar levels in your lungs go away? Does it help to recover from smoking?
As it turns out, it's not the vaporization itself that does it, but the taking a break from smoking. So we're finding in the folks who switch to the vaporizer in our lab, they do report a little hacking and wheezing the first couple of days when they're on the vaporizer and not using smoked cannabis anymore, because that's actually their lungs are recovering, and the cilia on the little cells inside your lungs that are throwing things off are now back in action more than ever before, and they can really toss off any of the gunk that has been holding them down for a while. I want to emphasize that smoking cigarettes, of course, paralyzes these cilia because nicotine freaks them out, essentially. So if you're smoking cigarettes, your vaporizer work will be markedly less efficient, and we've discussed if you want to quit tobacco and want to email me about it, I'm happy to help you.
Well, speaking of tobacco and marijuana, a lot of people, it's become popular to smoke blunts, the cigar type marijuana, where we're rolling tobacco with cannabis or rolling it in a tobacco leaf. Tell our listeners a little bit about the effects of being both a pot smoker and a tobacco smoker.
The problem, unfortunately, is that there's this sad interactive effect where cannabis alone seems to cause relatively few respiratory complications and no lung cancer. Tobacco alone, of course, we know makes for really horrid lung cancer, but the combination leads to markedly more respiratory problems and risk for lung cancer if, depending on whose data you're looking at. The bottom line is nicotine is really hard on the lungs, and the inhalation of smoke is really hard on the lungs, and there just seem to be a bad case for emphysema and for respiratory symptoms when you're using both of these at the same time. The thing with blunts is it seems destructive because you're really wrapping the cannabis with what seems like only a leaf or two of tobacco, but Dunlap and some other folks down in New York City have shown you do seem to get worse respiratory symptoms smoking blunts than alternative forms of administration. And this habit of blunt chasing, where folks will smoke a blunt and then smoke a cigar right afterwards, seems to be more universal than I realized. And that, of course, is really setting you up for a lot of nicotine-related respiratory problems.
So the cigarette smoker who also smokes pot is worse off than just smoking cigarettes by themselves?
Only for the emphysema and respiratory symptom data, not for the lung cancer data. In fact, it's controversial, but Tashkin presented some data at a conference that suggested that the cannabis was actually having a mild protective effect against cigarette-induced lung cancer, and as you can imagine, that's the kind of thing that's going to get him nailed to the cross on the cover of People magazine. So he didn't come right out with that so much. But our beloved Don Abrams, of course, called him on it, and in fact his data are consistent with that idea. But again, I'm not saying that it's not that smoking cannabis is some kind of lung cancer prevention strategy for cannabis users.
Okay. Speaking of cannabis and cancer, a lot of people in the chat room now are asking about Rick Simpson. He's the Canadian man who is claiming to be able to cure cancer through Phoenix Tears, which is his preparation of a hemp sort of oil. What is your take on that issue, the Rick Simpson cure?
I don't know Rick Simpson personally, and I haven't actually examined the oil. Some of the claims are way beyond where the science is right now, so we do have some evidence that cannabinoids can decrease the rate at which tumors form, but this notion that this oil is a cure for cancer is just not empirically validated yet in the standard randomized clinical trial kind of way. So it's not that he's had large groups of folks who got placebo and large groups of folks who got the oil and everybody in the oil got all better. It doesn't look like it's a potentially harmful habit, although I'm not sure you necessarily need to have his absolute brand, but it's clearly not the panacea when it comes to cancer. I'm open to the experimentation. I sure hope somebody can fund it.
All right. Moving on to another subject here. Rage is Not Bad asks, I've heard that long-term use of cannabis leads to depression. Is this true?
Long-term use of cannabis and depression?
Yeah. Does long-term use of cannabis lead to depression?
So Tom Denson and I published a paper showing that it doesn't seem to be that way. Recent data show that it's also not the case in that large study of Swedish conscripts. So those 50,000 guys who joined the army in Scandinavia and got followed up years and years later. So they've been followed up for 33 years now, and they're really modest, statistically significant links, but not big, meaningful ones with depression and anxiety. And I feel like, in a sense, it's just capitalizing on the fact that the sample is so big. And then there may be a subset of folks who are already depressed who turn to cannabis and then end up sort of exaggerating the look of cannabis as linked to depression. But Rick Musty showed that, in fact, plenty of non-cannabis using folks have comparable rates of depression. In teens, there was some concern about suicidal ideation in early cannabis use. Again, I think they may have a chicken and egg problem, but obviously we don't advocate use of marijuana for folks who are underage.
Right. And that chicken and egg problem always comes up. Do depressed people seek out cannabis, or does cannabis make people depressed? And I tend to think it's more of the former, people that are, living without health insurance and not much access to mental health treatment, try to do what they can do to deal with their depression. I'd love to see more research on that.
Well, and again, Tom Denson's study that he and I did together, I feel like it's just not the source. And in fact, we have wonderful treatments for depression and some great self-help books. And anybody who's interested, just contact your local mental health crew, or feel free to check out my homies at the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies.
I think you may be the first professor to have uttered homies on the air. Thank you for that. We got time for a couple more questions here with Dr. Mitch Earlywine for our Cannabis Science. If you don't have time to get your question in here on the air, you can always email Dr. Mitch at 420research@gmail.com. This song comes in from Ren Likes Bass. Hey, Ren, I like bass too. The question is, what effects does marijuana have on the nervous system?
The clincher is marijuana's impact on its own special receptor, the cannabinoid receptor. And we've got natural cannabinoids in our body that fire these markedly more rapidly and more with a lot more force. But the ones that come from the cannabis plant are, what is surprising, more mellow and not as dramatic. And then the impact is all the short-term impacts everyone seems to know pretty well, improved mood, mild decreases in the ability to form new memories, and general increase in hunger. And chronic effects depend upon, of course, a whole bunch of other health habits, but what we see are generally not a whole lot on the nervous system. Some strange heavy users who are put in MRIs when they do certain tasks have to use different parts of their brains in order to do as well as non-users on certain impulsivity type tasks where you have to inhibit a response. And some folks, what surprised, the parts of your brain that are involved in how you sense time is passing seems to behave a little more sluggishly after literally 5,000 doses. And then some work down in Australia suggests that the brain waves that your brain puts out when you're doing a really complicated task and trying to do it fast are a little bit different from the brain waves that people put out if they haven't used, and that's for folks who've used every day for 2 years or more. But we're talking about some pretty subtle stuff here. The fact that I actually have to, put electrodes on your head in order to find these results tells you that we're really, really searching for years and years to find these effects, and they're either small or non-existent.
All right. One more question here. I think we'll have to wrap it up for now. But remember, folks, every Wednesday we visit with Dr. Mitch Earlywine for Cannabis Science. So you can get your questions in next week or email them to 420research@gmail.com. This is a question from WN just about the use of marijuana medicinally for the swelling of joints if you have rheumatoid arthritis.
The data on arthritis of various types go all the way back to ancient China. We're talking 2800 BC, where there are a lot of individual differences in response, but people do really benefit, not just from decreased in swelling, but also less pain total. And we've seen that so consistently now, I think it's fair to say that this is a documented good effect. There's a lot of individual variation in strains, which makes me think we're still trying to get a feel for what is the exact mechanism, but I think that's one where cannabis really does do an excellent job, particularly in comparison to some of the over-the-counter meds that we have available that may, in the long term, actually harm joints or cartilage or things like that. So cannabis may actually be the among the safest of the drugs for that problem.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Earlywine, for joining us again. You always give us so much to think about, and you're very, very popular with the people in the chat room. Thanks again for being here.
It's delightful every time. See you soon.
All right. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Stick around.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after a word from these 420 friendly sponsors. Wait a minute. This is Internet radio. There are no dials here.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
High as a kite, everybody!
This drug in front of me is what they call marijuana.
If we had a dime for every dime bag bought in America, marijuana would be legal by now. Donate to NORML at NORML.org and support NORML Show Live.
Hey everybody, welcome back. 53 after the hour. I got a few minutes here to just chat with you a little bit, and I wanted to address something that came up in our chat over at stash.normal.org, our blog. And it's a recurring theme. I work as NORML's National Outreach Coordinator. See, I got a business card and everything, right? And so it's part of my job to recruit people for new NORML chapters and help them form chapters and so on. And oftentimes I get people that have this preconceived notion about what NORML is or isn't. Like this idea that, when's NORML going to come and legalize marijuana in our state? Or when's NORML going to do this or that? Well, folks, NORML is us. You know, it's you and me and everybody that gets involved with it. NORML isn't some big penthouse in Washington, D.C. with $5,000 Armani suit-clad wearing lawyers counting money and figuring out how they're going to legalize weed. This is, for the most part, a volunteer effort. When you look at NORML chapters all around the country, very, 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 very few people make any money doing this. And that's something that I want to address here. And this is this idea, and this is a crazy conspiracy theory. I've heard it before. I've read it in chat rooms and on blogs all over the place where they say, NORML doesn't really want to end prohibition. because they're a bunch of lawyers who get rich off defending us on pot charges. Pothead, please. Look, there are lawyers on the Normal Legal Committee, 350 of them or so, and they are dedicated to getting marijuana users off of the charges that they are charged with in this stupid war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs. However, if you're a lawyer, there's a whole bunch of other ways to get rich other than pot cases. So that idea, first of all, is kind of absurd. And second of all, I've always wondered why the idea that NORML secretly wants to keep pot illegal so they can get rich off of defending potheads, why does that same concept not work for other organizations? I mean, nobody ever goes around saying PETA wants to be sure that factory farms continue so that they continue to have jobs, right? No, nobody ever says the NAACP secretly wishes there to be more cross burnings so that they'll have something to complain about. Right? Nobody ever comes up to the pro-life protesters and say, you really want abortions to continue so you can keep protesting. So that's the problem. That's the thing, is people have this misconception. Now, throughout history, there's been good NORML chapters and there's been bad NORML chapters as well. And this is something I'm definitely working to improve for NORML's relations here. And if NORML hasn't done anything in your area, it's because people in your area haven't banded together and join NORML. And we've got all sorts of ways to help you out. We've got legislative language we can suggest to you, things, how to start petitions, how to lobby your state house members, how to get on email lists, how to send out, we can send out alerts for the legislation that's going on in your state. We've got all the resources at NORML.org for every single study you'd ever want to look up on why marijuana is good, what good things it can do, why prohibition is so bad, how much money we could save from taxing and regulating. It's this huge, huge resource. That's what NORML is. NORML is all of us NORML folks. You know, other groups out there work a lot on marijuana policy. I like to think that we work for marijuana people. We are only in existence through the support of regular, average, hardworking marijuana users like you. And so we can only be as strong as the support we get from the audience. So when I hear these crazy conspiracy theories about NORML being these rich male lawyers who secretly want marijuana to be illegal, it always just infuriates me, because I know a lot of these lawyers. I know guys like Douglas Hyatt, who's working in Seattle, Washington, pro bono to defend people who need organ transplants who are medical marijuana patients and getting kicked off the list because they test positive for THC. I know lawyers like John Lucy, who works here in Portland, Oregon, defending medical marijuana patients and regular cannabis consumers from the charges that they get. I know so many lawyers who have worked pro bono and given their testimony at the legislature of their state or at the federal government working to end marijuana prohibition. And these folks work really hard to do this. We're all in it together. And the more that we can work together and get rid of these stupid conspiracy theories, the better it's going to be for all of us here in the marijuana community. Before we go, I want to make sure that we can say goodbye to our good friend Cannabis Carrie, who's been moderating the chat, working her fingers to the bone with the Dr. Mitch segment, I'll bet.
Yeah, I need to do a little computer training, I think. I got to learn cut and paste a little bit better.
Control X, Control V, Carrie. Control X, Control V.
I'll work on it.
All right. Hey, I want to let folks know tomorrow we've got a great interview coming up with Jack Cole. He is the Executive Director of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and he'll be on the show to discuss the case of Officer Bradley Jardis in New Hampshire, a former LEAP officer who was dismissed from the organization for publicly proclaiming that officers should not arrest medical marijuana patients in New Hampshire or otherwise. So check out that interview on tomorrow's NORML Show Live. We've also got another hour of random tunes and chat coming up for you here on this window, so stay tuned here. All sorts of great music. If you didn't hear something you liked earlier, you'll hear something you like later. We do it every day, 1 hour before and 1 hour after, right here at live.normal.org, the voice of the marijuana nation. I'm Radical Russ, and for Cannabis Carrie up in Astoria, Oregon, we thank you for joining us. We're here every weekday. Make sure to check us out tomorrow. And on Saturday, a special live 7 p.m. Pacific birthday party for me right here on live.normal.org, coming to you from Oregon Normal's Cannabis Cafe. Take care of each other, tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.